Good evening. My name is Peter Kaplowski. I'm TIFF's Midnight Madness programmer. Welcome to an advanced screening of Terminator Dark Fate. Before we begin, yes, give an applause. Come on, it's exciting. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that tonight's events are taking place on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. We are grateful to have an opportunity to work in the community and to support First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities by showing the works of Indigenous filmmakers here at TIFF. And on behalf of TIFF, I'd also like to thank our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oreal, Paris, and Visa, and our major public supporters, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, and the City of Toronto. And thank you to all our members and donors for their generous contributions to TIFF and to those who support TIFF's learning programs year-round. And a huge, huge thank you to Paramount Pictures Canada for making tonight possible. Thank you so much. I'd also like to remind everyone that it's a pretty great, we're going into a pretty great month at the TIFF Bell Lightbox. And for fans of 90s tentpoles, we're showing Jurassic Park on November 4th with screenwriter David Coop live in person to talk about the iconic blockbuster, as well as his new sci-fi novel, Cold Storage. Grab your tickets at tiff.net. Now on to the main event. It has been 22 years and change since August 29th, 1997 came and went, and with it nary a sign of the nuclear judgment day brought about by killer robots, as first prophesized by a time-traveling soldier from the future in James Cameron's tech noir surprise hit of 1984, The Terminator. We have the events of the film's sequel, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, to thank for the cancellation of that apocalypse and subsequent enslavement of mankind by machines. More specifically, that debt is owed to Sarah Connor, her son and human resistance leader John, and the T-800 cybernetic Terminator robot reprogrammed to protect them, Uncle Bob. Fate was rewritten that day, and humanity was put on a new course of history. Subsequent sequels complicated things. Judgment Day, it turned out, was an inevitability. 1997 or otherwise, it was coming, and we were going to get our just desserts from grinning metal skeleton robots, whether we blew up a computer manufacturing plant or not. These sequels focused on distinct treatments of the aforementioned future leader of human resistance fighter, John Connor, recasting him respectively as an unwilling hero, a stoic leader, even a secret villain. And with time travel being so intrinsic to the series, each filmmaker was afforded an opportunity to literally rewrite the lore to suit the story they were trying to tell. And out of curiosity, I'm kind of interested in how familiar this audience is with the Terminator series. Can I have a show of hands for Terminator Genesis? Who saw Terminator Genesis? Okay. Terminator Salvation? Okay. Terminator Rise of the Machines? Okay. Terminator 2 Judgment Day? Okay, that's most of the room. Good. Terminator 1? Yeah, most of the room. How about Terminator 2 3D Battle Across Time? My personal favorite. Oh, a few people went to Universal Studios. I love it. Okay, well, it should be known for those of you who maybe missed the last few that this film, Terminator Dark Fate, forgoes the last three films and instead proceeds from the immediate aftermath of Terminator 2, this time stepping beyond the shadow of John Connor and instead favoring a new protagonist, Dani Ramos, portrayed by Natalia Reyes, whose fate we will come to learn is similarly entangled with the impending machine war. And similar to how each Terminator antagonist has evolved with each film, Dark Fate deftly synthesized concepts from its prior sequels with new ones to create a contemporary premise. But it is in the very welcome return of the indomitable Linda Hamilton in the iconic role of Sarah Connor that a necessary ingredient to the series' original appeal is reinstated, its beating heart, so to speak. And with Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor, so too returns James Cameron himself, both contributing to the story and guiding the production as a producer. These are all reasons to trust that the words direct sequel to Terminator 2 are more than just lip service. But most compellingly, for me at least, Dark Fate is also the first Terminator film since Cameron's to be directed by a filmmaker whose background in visual effects I find comparable to that of Cameron's own visual effects artist origins. Having co-founded the animation and visual effects design company Blur Studio in 1995, Tim Miller led his team towards an Academy Award nomination for Best Animated Short for Jeff Fowler's animated film Go for Broke in 2005, and collaborated with filmmakers and franchises like David Fincher and Marvel in the subsequent decade. In 2016, he made his directorial debut with Deadpool, which went on to have the biggest R-rated opening of all time and became a much-needed FU to those who would demand that all blockbusters be needed to be rated PG-13. This past year, he collaborated with Fincher again on the Emmy Award-winning animated anthology Love, Death, and Robots, whose second season is currently in production. And his most recent creative partner, producer James Cameron, has made him the envy of every filmmaker whose passion for visual effects was first ignited by purple lasers. He is the director of Terminator Dark Fate, and he is with us tonight. Please welcome Tim Miller! Yeah.
I feel like I'm giving some kind of valedictorian speech or something. This is so weird. I have no prepared remarks. All I have is thanks. Thanks for this opportunity to make this film, and thanks for you guys coming to watch it tonight. I know that you're all film fans and film buffs. Try not to judge me too harshly. Quite honestly, I make films for a more lowbrow audience than I think we have here. But hopefully you can lower your intellectual standards for this evening and enjoy Terminator Dark Fate. As you said, this is, in theory, the direct sequel to Terminator 2. I know all those other movies are swimming around in your head. Forget them. They didn't happen. They're gone. And because I know time travel is a tricky sort of concept, and the least said, the better, but it is important to this story, and so I've decided to go around to each individual theater during the opening week and explain time travel as it relates to this movie. No, but since I do have this opportunity, just real quick, it is kind of important, but also simple. The first Terminator movie, things happened as they were meant to, nothing was changed. The second Terminator movie, that was also true up until Sarah destroys Cyberdyne, and that is an event that had never happened before. So the Ouroboros, as Jim likes to say, the little eddy in time that they had been caught in was destroyed by Sarah doing this thing that hadn't been done before. And there is no alternate timeline. There is only one timeline. So from that event, when Sarah made that decision, the time wave rolls forward and rewrites the future. It just didn't work out the way she thought. It's true that Judgment Day is inevitable. The rise of AI is inevitable, much like I believe is true in our current society. And so the choice is that she makes really, they lead to a dark fate. And that is the title of our sequence. So we're going to be back for Q&A. I will answer your questions until you get tired of asking them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy. Even though we're cheating, I expect you to read every credit while we're talking.
Well, it goes on for 40 minutes, right?
Yeah, it does. It's the longest credits you've ever seen.
This was Kickstarted, I believe, too, right? So there's the...
It's crazy.
So first thing I want to get out of the way, it's interesting that James Cameron is attached to this project when, as a story contributor, when he, in a sense, commits, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, an Alien 3 at the start of this film.
Well, yeah.
In a way, it kind of takes this somewhat happy family unit and really is like, oh yeah, they didn't have happiness for very long.
You're right, but I was as mad as anybody else that Newt was dead at the beginning of Aliens 3. Number one, I show you John's death, and there's a reason for it, and also I think that the nature of this. The way time travel works, that Sarah made a decision to change the future, and there's a reason and consequences to that, and John's death is one of them. People may not agree with that, but I have a long and convoluted explanation for why that needed to happen.
Well, in many ways, and I sort of suggested this in my introduction, it kind of needed to happen for the series too. There have been so many interpretations of Connor as a character that it seemed to me like when writing a Terminator film, you either deal with John Connor or you don't. And this almost seemed like a way of getting past the John Connor character to kind of go in a new direction.
Yeah, and I also think that, I'm not making a statement. I'm a man, so I don't feel qualified to make a statement about gender here or female empowerment because I'm a dude. But I can tell you that you could view the Terminator series as a story about John Connor, the savior of mankind, fine. That's a very male-centric way to interpret it. I always interpret it as a story about Sarah Connor and a mother who was fighting for her son. And it's really just so if you're of the John Connor angle, then a story about John and his ascendance to be the savior is what you want to see. But I was never interested in that.
And was that what attracted you to this project? Because I take it that this was sort of the initial. What was the initial premise when you were brought on? Was it just let's make a movie about Sarah Connor with Linda? Was that like the initial starting place?
There was no premise when I was brought on. Mm-hmm. There was no script, no idea, no nothing. In fact, David Ellison met me while I was finishing Deadpool and talking about all things nerd. We discovered a mutual affection for Terminator, and he said, I thought I'd like another bite at the apple because he had made Genesis, and would you be interested in reinventing that? And I said, yeah, sure. Like every Terminator fan, I would like to see the continuation of Jim's stories, and if we could get Jim back to guarantee to all the fans of the franchise that it would be a continuation of his story instead of just some kind of rubber stamp bullshit, then it would be worthy and there would be some hope for that. Little did I know how what that would mean.
Well, in terms of, there's a lot of writers credited to the film, but I understand it even before it got to the script stage, you brought in sci-fi novelists as sort of a consultant group to sort of build the new Terminator world.
Yeah, because
there's some big names on that list too.
I love novelists. Writers to me are like rock stars. So we just did 2 days with Jim, just a blue
Jim Abercrombie.
Joe Abercrombie, Neil Stevenson,
yeah.
Neil Asher, Greg Bear, Warren Ellis. And we just did sort of blue sky ideas, like what could it be? Should it be a story about this or that? Should it be set in the future? Should it be set in the past? Joe had a steam-powered Terminator night story that I said, no, we're not doing that. So anyway, we did that, blue sky ideas, and then we brought the screenwriters in, and we talked about this at dinner, and it's deceptive to see all those writers there because that's not what happened, and that's not what goes into the script. So as Jim has said, we were inventing a whole new arc to this story that would have multiple films. And even though we're not counting on that, I feel like this kind of can stand alone. And if we didn't make another one, it wouldn't be a terrible thing in terms of feeling unsatisfied. But anyway, we brought in the writers who would write other parts of the story, and they were all in the writer's room. So Josh Friedman and Chick Egley were in the writer's room and helped conceive the ideas of this new story arc, but they didn't actually work on the script, even though they're credited because that's the way contracts work. And then David Goyer has a writing partner, Justin Rhodes, so that was a plus one. And then we threw away Goyer's script entirely, and Billy Ray rewrote it from scratch. So it's still a convoluted path, however, not quite that bad. Not six writers bad.
And was there, I feel like when a filmmaker is given a project keys to a series like this, I can only imagine that set pieces come to mind. Was there certain key set pieces, one that were maybe demanded of you, like this has to exist in this film? And was there stuff that you also were like, I'd love to bring this to the series, like a set piece like this from the film?
There are some that are natural. Like I feel like some things are fan service in a bad way. Some things are fan service in a good way. Like a truck chase in a Terminator film, that's fan service in a good way. I want to see that as a fan much more than I want to see Hasta La Vista, baby, for the 12th, fucking time. So I think those things are good. But we did sit down and do sort of these are the big set pieces because they take a lot of planning and a lot of thought, and most of the VFX money goes there. So you kind of think that way. And it turns out, I never would have guessed that Jim kind of thinks that way, and he had a whole notebook full of action ideas in a vacuum that not tied to character. I'd like to see a truck fall through an icy river and get swept away underneath, which kind of became the Humvee underwater sequence there, even though there's no ice on the river. So we kind of, but we didn't. It wasn't quite as mercenary, I guess, is that. There was an organic nature to that sort of a thing. But some of them you back into, like the C5 sequence. You kind of, they wanted,
that was
Jim wanted to do a big air battle C5 sequence. And I said, well, they just did that in The Mummy. And he said, well, I didn't see The Mummy. And
he's too busy making Avatar movies.
And I said, therefore, it doesn't exist.
On the subject on not wanting to hear "Hasta La Vista, Baby" again, was it a back and forth discussion of whether Carl was going to give a thumbs up before he died? It just feels like, are we a cut away from?
I mentioned this in an interview the other day, and it provoked a spike of fan anger and
I'm sorry,
bile,
I didn't read this.
because I am not a fan of the thumbs up. I know. And some people, it's their favorite moment in cinema, and I don't begrudge you that moment. You enjoy it, you're welcome to it, but to me, it just felt a little hokey. And I think maybe if I hadn't been 27 when I saw Terminator 2, because I'm old, maybe I would feel different. If I was 12, I would have said awesome, but I wasn't. And when Linda came to set. Or actually not to set. When I first met her, I said, "How do you feel about the thumbs up moment?" She's like, nah. And I'm like, okay, you and I are gonna be fine. But if you love it, I don't want to ruin it for you. If it's part of your childhood, great. Because I love Independence Day. I can't defend that movie or many of the moments in it, but. Fuck, I love it. I'll watch it every time. I just, Welcome to Earth and Will Smith. It's stupid, but.
So the first two Terminator films, I feel, were always teasing this idea of going south of the border, and that happens at the end of Terminator 1, and Terminator 2, incorporates a lot of Spanish in the screenplay. But this film actually goes to Mexico, and in doing so, begins to skirt engaging with some political commentary. It never becomes sort of didactic or overbearing across the film. Clearly, it must have been something at the front of mind while making this film in our current climate.
Sure.
And was that something that came through? Like, was that something that came through a specific writer or something that you wanted to see?
Once you decide you're going to do a story that starts in Mexico and ends in the southern United States, you kind of have to cross a border, and you can't avoid the zeitgeist implications of that. So, you could do it, and then everybody would go, "Oh yeah, well you just avoided all the issues and social commentary that could have been made." So I chose to walk a middle ground, and we use it as part of the thematics of Terminator, which are Jim hates authority. In all its forms, and that is sort of a thematic of all the Terminator movies. It's always a police station that's getting wrecked or something like that. And so in this case, it's a Border Patrol facility. But I tried to walk a line because I don't. I'm about as far left politically as you can get, but I also don't want to vilify the Border Patrol agents and the law enforcement agents who are trying to do a good job. They're probably very good people, and it's a hard position to be in. And I also feel for the immigrants that just want to cross the border and get a better life. It's just a shitty situation for everybody. And it was shitty to shoot. But it does, it's interesting too. So, I made a big speech. I walked into that set that day and saw people in cages, and it was a pretty powerful moment, and I said, I got to say something about this, and I got on the mic and got all weepy and apologetic for being American. And anyway.
The thing that also is striking about it is that it's imagery that we've actually seen in future war movies, like some of the other Terminator films. Like, that's what happens to mankind with the machines, and we're doing it to ourselves. So I feel like it actually ends up being a very organic image to feature in a Terminator
Are you
film.
trying to suggest that Trump is a machine?
Yeah, there might be an endoskeleton under there.
Yeah.
He's
a faulty machine.
Faulty machine,
Yeah.
for sure. Speaking of machines, when pitching the Rev 9 concept, I like to imagine that someone, yourself or perhaps Jim, went up to a chalkboard and wrote Terminator, added an S, and then added a $. Because I mean, like, this is just the idea of like, yeah, of course. Why, they've had the liquid skeleton on the endoskeleton. They've had the liquid metal on the endoskeleton before, but the idea of separating it seemed like a fairly inspired evolution of the Terminator. How did that design come? Where did it come from?
We he's referencing a not apocryphal story about aliens that Jim did that, because I heard that story in person at least 4 times.
From Jim, I'm sure.
Yes. But we had a whole board of abilities, like what could this new Terminator be? In the writer's room, you do a lot of different things, but sometimes you'll say we're gonna take a day and talk about what this Terminator can do, because these things, these base level building blocks, really have a huge influence on story. So we took a day and filled up a couple of whiteboards with, what if he can form rail guns out of liquid metal that can shoot nails and pieces and chunks of bullets and whatever. But the trouble with Terminator movies, or the great thing about Terminator movies, is that you have this series of catch and release. And if he's so powerful, it becomes unbelievable that they get away from him. And if he's not powerful enough, he's not a formidable foe, right? So it's, how do you make him grounded enough so that you feel like the heroes can stand against him, but make him scary enough that you feel like inevitably, he's going to take him down. And it's hard to walk that line. And so that was, I can't even remember whose idea it was to like make them autonomous. Let's say me.
Do we have questions from the audience? I have a few more, but I'll throw to you guys for a bit. Yes. There's a microphone coming to you. Hang on a second.
Something I found a little bit perplexing about these sequels is that, why does Arnold age in the movie? He's not human. He's a cyborg. Can you please explain that to me?
I think a previous film explained it as that the skin ages, because the skin is living tissue, so it would age.
Yeah, Jim explained that in Terminator 1, I think. He says it's normal human tissue. It sweats. It has BO. It ages. It's a human shell made from human DNA. They grow it on a rack somewhere.
I have to say too, I really enjoyed Arnold's performance here, and Carl as a character. I think it's very funny. It's a really funny performance, and that sequence where he's describing his job and his drapery business. Let's take us to that day, to shooting that sequence.
I'll talk about that, but I'll also say that Jim is very adamant about that Terminators could even reproduce. I thought that jumped the shark, but he's like, you clearly see Arnold's penis in Terminator 1. He's got the requisite anatomy. Why wouldn't, And I said, whoa. I'm not, I can't be party to that. But he was completely absolutely fucking serious.
He's got that in his notebook.
It's in the notebook. There's a whole action scene around the penis. Sorry, what was your question? No, I remember. That scene was Jim had wrote just the first few lines of that, and Arnold wrote the rest of it. Arnold wrote the joke part of it. Jim just thought it would be funny if he was talking about drapes. And then Arnold wrote this whole. He's like, I think I should do this whole thing. And I'm like, it's fucking brilliant. I love it.
Other questions? Yes, right over there. Then we'll go to the back. Yeah, we're just waiting for the mic, and then we'll go to the back. If the other mic can go to the back. Yeah, you, and then the other mic can go to the back for the second question.
Awesome. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much. The movie was awesome, so congrats on that.
Thank you. I hope you guys liked it, but I knew if I asked you if you did, you'd just pretend because you're Canadian that you did.
Awesome. And so second, like you said, being a fan of Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day, were you worried about making a sequel directly to that movie, knowing that most fans think of that as the best one? Or did you have any concerns about making a sequel to this movie?
You mean like personal concerns? Like
yeah,
would
like you personally.
No, because I knew I was going to fail going in. I knew not in my wildest dreams, nor do I think this beats Terminator 2. And I worked my little heart out on this, and I love the movie, but Terminator 2 has this sort of special place in everybody's heart, even if you were old like me when you saw it or young. It's one of those timeless movies that everybody's watched 40 times. And, I hope Deadpool will be that for a generation, 20 years from now. But you can't hope to supplant that. I knew that was a failed gesture. I also knew, the fan hatred of killing John, those kind of decisions, but I don't really worry about that kind of shit. I just try and make the best movie I can, and I sort of hope that because I am that guy that loves movies, and I am that guy that really just wants to make a good film that feels like it's part of these other great films, that I'll be able to add a worthy successor to the franchise. I'm not just there to get a paycheck or anything like that. I really want to make a good Terminator movie.
Was Linda concerned about killing John? What was her reaction to that?
Oddly enough, not Jim, not a single writer, not Linda, not anybody, but perhaps Eddie Furlong had anything at all to say. But oh yeah, this seems like the right way to do it. Eddie wasn't
At
Eddie
the
was
back
not.
there.
Hi. I'm sure from all of us, sincerely, thank you. That was phenomenal. As unlikely as it is, being able to one day shake your hand and take you for a beer to say thank you.
Is this a question?
Yes, I'm getting there. My question, how important was it wanting to give a sense of personality to the Terminators in this movie? Because we haven't really had that sense of personality since D2 with Robert Patrick. So especially with the Rev 9, because I thought that was fantastic. But was that like an important piece?
Well, it's one of those things where I think I read a lot of nonfiction as well as fiction, and I tried to read quite a bit about the evolution of artificial intelligence right now. But even if you don't read those books, you can see where it's heading, and I actually think it's potentially more insidious than it was when Jim wrote the first Terminator movies, and artificial intelligence was relegated to big defense contractors or the military industrial complex, because they were the only ones that could make computers capable enough to even theoretically invent artificial intelligence. But anyway, if you look at where it's headed right now, a lot of AI development goal is to interact with humanity. It analyzes what you do on social media, what you buy, things like that, and it's going to start making decisions for you. It's going to tell you what kind of car you should buy. It's going to tell you where you should buy it and the price that fits the rest of your budget. It's going to start making all these decisions, and quite honestly, it's going to do them better than you do. And the next phase of that is going to be you releasing those decisions to that AI that makes better decisions than you do. And it'll be able to interact with you in a way that makes you feel comfortable with that, i.e. very human. So I think as it gets to know us better, it's going to become more and more human, or at least be able to present as human. And so that's happening now. And to the idea that a super intelligence 22 years in the future is not going to be able to make something that is more human than human seemed pretty ridiculous to me. And so I thought, what's better than the assassin that you don't see coming? What's better than the machine that can say, well, it would be easier for me to have a conversation than kill these 50 cops, because if I kill these 50 cops, there's going to be more cops coming after me, and it's going to be a big thing, and it's going to make my job more difficult, where if I'm just charming for 30 seconds, I can move on with my mission. And I think that Terminator is more dangerous. I read Reddit too much, so I know that wasn't a popular decision with some of those people, but it makes sense to me, and to do otherwise seems to ignore the trends of technology. Sorry, long answer.
I also really like that idea too, that sort of set up that in terms of the universe that Sarah stopped, that Skynet sent a series of T-800s that are just out there in different times. she's killed many of them, but perhaps not all of them. And,
Perhaps not. Perhaps not.
and they're all just kind of living without their future, without a mission. That's again a really, I think, intriguing concept that opens the universe.
Yeah, and that was kind of the key to Arnold's evolution. But again, that was set up in Terminator, where all the T-1000 and the T-800 are both sent back in time within minutes of each other. You know, Skynet is about to fall, and he sends these two Terminators back. Why not send 12 Terminators back to different points in time and hope that one of them gets John? And so that's kind of what happened. And we called them slow bullets. And they're in the dialogue that's in the movie now. I think Sarah suggests she killed 2 of them. We had a longer version of that conversation that suggests she killed more. I personally think it's at least 6 or 7. And then the further implication is that, and if you look at that opening scene again, where Grace's time bubble arrived, you'll see that the car that almost hits the time bubble is Sarah's car. It's the truck, and she was there to kill Grace. If the time bubble hadn't wrecked her car, she'd have probably shot Grace in the head from a distance, and that fucked her up from getting to Gabriel. That's who we call it, Terminator Gabriel. It was his name before I cast Gabriel Luna in the role.
Really?
Oddly enough. Yeah, Diego Boneta's character in the script was Diego, and then also Arnold's wife Alicia was Alicia before I cast Alicia Bocchero to play her. Anyway, I had at one point had in the script this uncomfortable moment when Grace realizes that Sarah would have shot her and killed her if she had been able to, and it was a comedy beat, and it was an uncomfortable moment for Sarah when she goes, so anyway, Dani,
Other questions? Right at the very back, if a microphone could go there. And then for the microphone on this side, how about right down here? And we'll do those 2 in a row.
Thank you. Well done. Just wanted to ask a question. So at Comic-Con, James Cameron said that Eddie Furlong was going to be back, but I didn't see him in the credits. Was he? Or
yeah, he was in the credits somewhere, I think. I didn't memorize the credits. Yeah, I wish he hadn't said that, but he did. But he is in there briefly. The way we did that opening scene is it's body doubles for all 3 characters, and they wear these little hoods that allow us to track their heads. And then the heads are fully CG. They're completely replaced by CG heads. And to get the expressions, we brought in Arnold, Linda, and Eddie Furlong and had them record their facial animation for those moments. Originally, we had a little bit of dialogue in that scene as well, so Eddie had a couple of lines, but later on I decided I didn't like it, so I cut it out, and it's just this brief moment of a mother and son having a loving moment before the bottom falls out.
perfect. Thank you.
Right over here was the question.
Yes, I was wondering, what is the funnest memory you have of working on the new Terminator movie?
What was the most fun you had on this movie, or maybe the most memorable day?
Man, I loved working on this movie because I love the people involved in the process. It is not akin to war time, but it is this intense process, and it brings you together and you feel like a family with all these people. And for me, it's particularly the cast, because you have to have this rapport with them. So I have so many good memories of I love all of the cast. They're great. But I do love this one moment when Arnold came to set, and he tested me. You have this who's going to be in charge here sort of moment. And he didn't like the moment where Sarah says, I am going to kill you and this is all over. And we had done that bit of dialogue over by the shooting range, and he liked it over there, but this was not in Jim's Jim wrote this scene, but I thought I wanted it here because I thought it was particularly poignant for Sarah to watch him have this family that she never had because of him, and then after that say, well, I'm going to kill you. So anyway, we do the line, and Arnold didn't want to do it, and I said, well, we're doing it. I like it. So he said, Sarah says, when this is all over, I am going to kill you. So Arnold says, I understand. And he turns away, and I said, let's go again. And he goes, I understand. And I said, I see what's going on here. And we're going to keep doing this scene until you give me a fucking take that I want. I don't care if we stay here all night. And he goes, all right. And then he gives me the take. But he's a really funny guy, and he's great. He didn't. I don't know. To this day, was it a test or was he just fucking with me? I don't know.
All right. We only have time for a few more questions. I'm going to go right over there first, and then we'll go to the other side, the waving hand at the back there. So microphone over there, but here first.
Hi. On behalf of women of a certain age, thank you. And, as I said to you as you were going by, you here have reset the future as a matriarchy. You've got the mother, daughter, grandmother, daughter, mother. I'm doing that in the wrong order, but you know what I mean. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, one of the things that's interesting to me about this is we're in an era where people want to talk about more women doing different things. That could be that could have been all male, all female. It was all female. We weren't that aware of it. It was sort of more of a spiritual feeling. So I just wonder if you can speak to the idea of making a kick-ass movie with women of all ages in that.
Well, I wish I could say I had an agenda and I stuck to it, and that's what it was. But it really kind of came apart. I mean, it came more organically. And Mackenzie's been out there doing a lot of press, and she gets the question all the time: how do you feel about these, strong female characters? And she kind of gets impatient with the question, and she says we should just be saying strong characters. It's not about female characters, or they're just strong characters. Because she's looking forward to this day where it's sort of post-gender about the conversation, but we're not at that day yet, and I understand why you asked that question. I, as a man, again, I don't profess to be qualified to make any kind of statement about female empowerment, but I am proud that feels like that's what's in the movie, and hopefully it doesn't feel too preachy. And all the decisions to make the characters female or not came from a really grounded story position rather than a political position, which I also think is a better way to get there. We have John Connor as the savior of the future, and he's a dude. If we're going to make things different, what better way to start with that by making them not from the U.S., which we've seen that before, and to make them a woman. The savior needs to be a woman, and it would be a different kind of savior too, not just a guy that picks up a gun. Women have different rationales, different ways of doing things, and different approaches that would make her whole approach to saving humanity, I think, different and more interesting. And Grace is a woman because from the very first moment this writer, Joe Abercrombie, started talking about this character, he said her. What if this soldier comes back and she's this fucked up drug addict with scars all over her because she's had these operations, et cetera, et cetera. And we all thought, yeah, that's cool.
When we talked a bit about...
And Linda is Linda, so,
Yeah.
she came with the box.
Yeah. But when we talked about it a bit too, about the story during the screening, we did discuss this idea that John Connor was a certain kind of leader, and there's an idea that like his future was one in which humanity was winning, and that the type of leader the Legion future needed was a different kind of leader. That it wasn't the scarred, grizzled stone-faced.
Let's just say there was a difference of opinion between Jim and I about that, and I lost. But we really actually don't. I kind of left it.
It's ambiguous.
It's ambiguous, right?
Yeah.
And there's some other director out there who may. Well, I don't know. I don't know how the movie's tracking at the moment. Maybe it won't make enough money to engender a sequel. But it's for them to decide what that future is. I think there's something really dramatic about a last stand and humanity on the brink of being snuffed out forever. And Jim likes winners. Humanity's winning, and they need to keep on winning. I guess it's like, what do you think is more dramatic? I like losers.
I believe I had a microphone go over there. Yes.
Hi. Thank you for making the movie, and thank you for actually telling me that it's just a sequel to T2 and forget the other ones that were really quite bad. So
Pair amount of people are in the room.
Sorry. Well, they were fine, but this was good. So my question was, so knowing that Grace needed her medication or whatever drugs that she needed, why doesn't she always come packing? It just seems weird.
Because you have to come through time naked.
Right, but then she does go to like a, CVS or a Walgreens or whatever, but like...
Right. So imagine you're Grace, and you get to Danny's house, and you find a big pool of blood with the person you came to protect lying in it because you stopped off at CVS. Wouldn't you feel badly about that?
I think,
but you're right, and we did originally we had talked about it, and actually she came up because we were talking about why wouldn't you bring a weapon back that could take care of a Terminator, and so the first time I wrote that action beat. By the way, our second unit director and supervising stunt, right, choreographer Phil Silvera is here in the audience.
round of applause.
Because he's shooting a Netflix series up here in Toronto. But anyway, the first time we wrote that action scene, at the end of it, she beats the fuck out of these guys. And then we see her pick up a knife and cut herself open. And she takes this package from out inside her abdominal cavity. And it's a weapon and some drugs from the future. But we didn't do it.
All right, we're going to have one more question. I know there's a few, but let's go right in the middle. And yeah, right there, you'll be the last question. Oh.
I'll just ask out loud.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. It was a great blockbuster. I love the cinematography. No shaky cam or anything.
Microphone is right there.
There's shaky cam all over the place.
Not as bad as some of the other movies I've seen, but
It's
it's a great blockbuster. It's a big action movie, and it leads me to wonder why a November release.
I mean, I don't know if you have any control of release dates or release schedules.
I don't. I don't. But this is a really good date, actually. You have November 1st, and if you looked at the film calendar of releases, we have a pretty good run up into Thanksgiving weekend where nothing like it is coming out. What is really fucking us now is Joker, which it's like sucking all the air out of the room. And it doesn't even make people happy. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet, but I don't want to see it because I don't.
You want to go spend money on your movie?
No. I really just don't feel like, fuck, why do I want to be depressed? I don't want to go and see this sad movie. But I hear it's beautiful, but I wish it would just go away.
On that note, please put your hands together for Tim Miller, Terminator Dark Fate. See it again November 1st. Tell your friends.
Thank you.